Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We have some massive news heading up to the 2023 NFL Draft as the Chicago Bears have officially traded that number one overall pick to kind of the team that we least expected. We talked a lot about Houston trading up a spot. We talked a lot about the Colts trading up to number one. The Panthers go all the way from 9 to 1. The official compensation. So the Panthers obviously getting that number one overall pick from the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears get pick 9, pick 61, a first round in 2024, a second round in 2025, and wide receiver DJ Moore. That's a massive haul, especially considering that the Panthers probably are still going to struggle year one with their rookie quarterback, and the Bears get their first round pick in 2024. Before we get into it, kind of talking about the possibilities that will be happening, we just want to say thank you to you guys again. The support you guys have shown throughout the draft process has been absolutely awesome. It truly means a lot to us, and talking about different teams' needs, position fits, stacking these quarterbacks has been a blast. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And then more importantly, let us know your thoughts on this mock draft, because there's a lot of different ways things can play out. We're just kind of offering one possibility here. Dill, I'm going to kick it to you. First, just overall thoughts on this trade here.
I mean, the Panthers, they went for broke, I guess you'd say. Like, you've been saying it this whole time. They've missed so often. They've struggled for so many years with a pretty solid roster outside of being deplorable at quarterback. So they took their swing, and at this point, I almost think, like, yeah, it's worth it. Like, they probably overpaid for the pick. I mean, you look at what they gave up. DJ Moore is probably worth a first round about in his own right, and then you give up 2 more. It's a haul, but, like, that's what you had to do to go get Bryce Young, because I'm sure the Colts had a good offer for that pick. I'm sure the Raiders.
Whatever team was going to trade up to number one was going to give up a lot, because the Colts wanted it. The Houston Texans were probably in it for it. The Raiders too. Like, there were a lot of teams that were making offers, picking up the phones for this pick. So you knew the Bears were in a great spot to get a king's ransom for this pick, and I think they executed it pretty damn well. I mean, they got a lot in return. I think ideally for Chicago fans, it was maybe trading down to 4 and getting a lot so you could still get a Jalen Carter, Will Anderson. But now let's kind of situate and talk a little bit about the Panthers have a guy, right? They made this move with a guy in mind. There's no doubt in my mind their mind's been made up. They have their prospect that they want. Dill, who do you think it is? I have it being Bryce Young. You agree here?
Yeah, I still have it as Bryce Young. And I do think it's way closer. And I think a lot of people are coming around to CJ Stroud a little more. Like, I hear more buzz that he might be the number one, but I still think it's Bryce Young, just the way he elevates the guys around him and puts them more on his shoulders. And again, we never really got to see that a ton from CJ Stroud. You could argue against Georgia, he did it, but still, that's still a really loaded team, a really loaded wideout group. And you saw Bryce Young was playing with very much the opposite of that this year, and I felt like he lifted everyone up.
Yeah, there's no question Bryce Young's the best quarterback in this class. The one question you do have is about the size. And if the Panthers feel good about him being healthy, being durable at the next level, I think Bryce Young's a no-brainer pick. Now what I want to talk about, though, and I think we both agree Bryce Young's are both our quarterbacks one. There was a lot of buzz that Anthony Richardson was the Panthers guy. Like, they met with him at the combine. They obviously liked him a lot in the traits that he has. Let's talk about how this top 5 could work out, because you look at Seattle and Detroit, they could be sitting in a really good position where I don't think it's crazy to see 4 quarterbacks go in the first 4 picks, because the Panthers are getting a quarterback. I think you're pretty damn sure the Houston Texans are getting a quarterback, and the Colts are getting a quarterback at 4. That means the Cardinals have a lot of leverage for that last team that wants to go up and get their quarterback of the future, those top 4 guys, to trade out of that pick. In this mock, I have the Raiders going all the way up to 3 and getting Anthony Richardson. And you see Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and then Will Levis 4 to the Colts. If you're a Seattle Seahawks fan, if you're a Detroit Lions fan, you are absolutely thrilled with how this draft seems to be playing out here.
I mean, I get your logic on possible 4 going, but I just don't see a team trading up for either Richardson or Levis. Like, the 2 players, just you go for broke when you're going for a guy like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. I mean, those guys are
more bona fide,
very much blue chip prospects. Anthony Richardson and Will Levis are kind of blue chipped by process of elimination, that this is just somewhat of a weak class, but you didn't see enough from those two, I don't think, to go up and mortgage your future on them panning out, because there's a high potential that neither of them are particularly great starters, I think, because at the end of the day, the college film wasn't good enough for either of them. And you could argue Will Levis, not a great team around him, but that's the problem. You need to be able to elevate and be that guy when you're in college. And Anthony Richardson, you just like, I don't know, you saw too many moments where it was really weak play compared to a few moments of absolute brilliance. So and
the two things we've talked about was like these two prospects being kind of lottery tickets. Like they could be complete busts, worthless, you throw it away, or you're buying a new house in Cancun. And like I think these two guys, like teams make quarterback selections based on the upside, based on the house in Cancun. Because if you want to win a Super Bowl, that's what you do. You ain't winning. I'm sorry, Minnesota fans, but you ain't winning a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins. If Anthony Richardson and Will Levis kind of fill out and kind of reach their potential, those are Super Bowl winning quarterbacks with the potential they have. And I think that's what teams are going to be looking at. Now, the wild thing is you don't mortgage your house. Like the Raiders are going to have to give up a lot to move up to 3. You're not going to mortgage your sell your house to buy a lottery ticket, but I think you could see teams doing that. And so I wanted to play around with this possibility if this happens, because you look at 5 and 6, the Seattle Seahawks get Will Anderson, and then the Detroit Lions potentially with the steal of the draft getting Jalen Carter.
I mean, that would be such a dream scenario for these two teams, the Lions and the Seahawks, because they're getting two guys who I think are pretty much number 1 overall pick.
Both would have been number 1 overall picks last year.
Yeah, so you're getting guys who are that good, but you're getting them at 5 and 6 because hopefully you're thinking some teams are just so desperate. Now, I honestly don't see that playing out like that. I think there's a good chance 3 are going. I'd be really surprised if 4 go, but you know,
so it looks like Seattle's in a great spot.
They always pick giant team like quarterbacks really high. So
yeah, and it looks like Seattle's a great spot, right? Like Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, it's seemingly one of them is falling to 5, right? Because you got 3 quarterbacks going in the top 4, and then one maybe Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. But then you're having the pick of either Will Anderson, Jalen Carter falling to you at 5. If 4 quarterbacks go, you're gonna be absolutely thrilled if you're the Detroit Lions. And we've talked about this a little bit. As the process goes on, I think it's really easy for GMs to kind of just like sell themselves on quarterbacks. Like go watch Will Levis during his pro day and be like, you see how he's spinning that football? Like I'm not even going to watch the 2022 film. That dude spins it. Let's go up and get him. And like you have 2 more months until it's draft night. Like these teams are going to be trying, just like I try to sell myself on Michigan win national championship every year. Like they're trying to sell themselves on their quarterback of the future. And I think as time goes on in more team, you just see the first domino fall. I think we're looking at a serious possibility of 4 quarterbacks going in the first 4 picks, and you got Seattle Seahawks or the Detroit Lions just sitting there kind of licking their chops, potentially getting some of the best players in this draft. So moving on after that scenario, you have a lot of that's kind of how it goes. When quarterbacks get pushed up boards, you have really good prospects falling down. The Cardinals traded back to 7. They go get my cornerback 1 of this class, and it's Christian Gonzalez. To briefly, and Dill, I'm kind of interested to hear your take. You have Christian Gonzalez, Devon Witherspoon, and Joey Porter Jr. as your top 3 cornerbacks on your board. I like Christian Gonzalez the most because I think he's the best athlete. I think he's the most battle-tested dude. Witherspoon's film is phenomenal. I'm just worried about how much he was tested in the Big Ten West. You hear us talk about that a lot. Christian Gonzalez is the superior athlete. He's a little bit more battle-tested, so I see him translate into the NFL a little bit better. And then, Dill, this is a Myles Murphy podcast. Tyree Wilson's a good player, but Myles Murphy would be a phenomenal fit for the Atlanta Falcons at 8.
If you can get Myles Murphy outside of 6, that I feel like that'd be a really nice spot to be able to take him. I think he's a top 6, 7 guy in my mind. I think he's consensus the second best edge rusher. And if the Falcons end up with him, that's because I kind of see him going to the Seahawks at the end of the day. Well,
I mean,
we'll
unless
what the quarterbacks do, but
yeah, exactly. Unless Seattle gets a chance, and it's looking like they'll get a shot at either Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. With obviously now it seems to be locked in that 3 quarterbacks are going in the first 4 picks. Pick number 9, the Chicago Bears trading down from 9. I think they go get Paris Johnson Jr. Like, the offensive line hasn't been great. You want to be able to run the football with Justin Fields. You also want to pass protect. Paris Johnson Jr. is my offensive tackle 1. I don't think it's wild for them to go get Tyree Wilson. I don't think it's wild for them to go get a cornerback, but you want to build around Justin Fields. You got all this draft capital to make that happen. Go make sure he's protected. Go make sure he's healthy. Paris Johnson Jr. is going to make that happen.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that pick. They just got to give Justin Fields some help and figure out whether he is there, whether they're going to give him the $250 million contract at the end of the day.
And I mean, Justin Fields that's the epitome of being surrounded by just really lack of talent last year.
And in fairness to him, you started to see him kind of lift everyone up. Like, that offense moved a little bit more than you would have thought. And that's the trait I think you very much see in Bryce Young. That's why I have him number 1. And that's why I think the Bears need to give him a shot with some studs around him.
And they're doing that. I think the Chicago Bears have, and it's like, it almost seems weird that they traded it this early, because you almost want to just like get the bidding war. Like, oh, the Colts offered me this. The Colts just threw a 3rd rounder in here. And then you tell the Panthers throwing another pick. And the longer it goes, the more you get. But I think they executed it really well. Like, you look at this haul, it's a lot. I think they did it very good.
More as in that trade feels like, because I would have thought all the picks alone would have been worth that pick, and then DJ Moore.
Yeah, yeah. When Shefty tweeted the tweet, you're like, pick 9, okay. Pick 61, okay. First round of 2024, that's going to be good. A second round of 2025. Then he sneaks in like an all-pro wide receiver at the end of the tweet, and DJ Moore as well. I'm like, holy shit! Like, that was a very good haul for them. All right. Devon Witherspoon at pick 10. I feel like there's not much to talk about. I think that pick would make a lot of sense for the Philadelphia Eagles. Paris Johnson Jr. has been a very popular spot for Tennessee here at 11. You go get your next tackle. That Peter Skoronski is like fighting Broderick Jones for my offensive tackle too. But I think in this Tennessee offense, I think Broderick Jones makes a lot more sense than Peter Skoronski.
Yeah, I do too. You want a guy who just wants to run block, and that's what Broderick Jones does at a really elite level. As much as like there's maybe some things to clean up in the past, but
which he can. Like, again, he's a phenomenal. I think he's going to clean up that game. Him and Paris Johnson Jr. have some stuff to clean up in pass pro. They're both the athletic enough to make that happen. Pick 12, Quentin Johnston. I will say Jackson Smith-Njigba is right nipping at Quentin Johnston's heels in terms of wide receiver 1 in this class. But Quentin Johnston, I think, would fit a little bit better in Houston as well. You have John Mechie coming back. Hopefully he's getting healthy, getting ready. I think Quentin Johnston is the epitome of a potential wide receiver 1 at the next level. I think Houston really needs that. You pair him up with C.J. Stroud. That being said, C.J. Stroud going 2 to the Texans, Jackson Smith-Njigba going 12 to the Texans. That'd be pretty sweet.
I mean, there's like some sense to make with that. Like, those, they like each other, obviously. When Jackson Smith was like the guy last year or 2 years ago with Garrett Wilson Olave. So there's obviously some great chemistry on.
I will say, and I'm not a huge fan of that argument of like the chemistry and like, oh, like matchup players you played together in college. That's different. Like the CJ Stroud JSN were just, that was like Brady Edelman type stuff. Like, they were just on the same page. The ball was being put right where JSN needed. JSN was winning right where CJ Stroud needed him to win. That chemistry, that was like, I mean, going back to last year, and you said it, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave on that team. JSN CJ Stroud connection was the best quarterback wide receiver connection we saw in college football in 2021. Tyree Wilson ends up falling a little bit in this draft, and that's just more of a product of me liking Myles Murphy more as a prospect. I know the Jets don't need an edge rusher, but if Tyree Wilson's here at 13, Robert Saleh is not letting him fall anymore.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then Brian Branch again, like,
makes sense.
And people are just hating on him because the 40. It's like, no, who cares? You know he can play. It's like, he run like a 4.8. It was a little slow, but
it was slow. But that's not Brian Branch's game. If you watch Brian Branch, he's not necessarily winning because he's a freak athlete. He's winning because he's a damn good football player, and he pretty much has the best instincts in this class. And again, he can do so much for a defense. And I every time when it gets to Brian Branch, my pitch is you want to get as much speed and coverage ability on the field at one time if you're a defense while being able to stop the run. Brian Branch is going to allow you to do that at a high level. Pick 14 or pick 15. The Packers kind of in rebuild mode, kind of hard to get a sense of what they're doing. Go get Peter Skoronski, who's going to be a 10-year stud for you on the offensive line, whether he's playing guard, whether he's playing tackle. I think that pick makes a lot of sense. It's not a flashy pick for the Packers, but it's just you're eating your vegetables. You're kind of rebuilding after the Aaron Rodgers era where it doesn't. And that's really the last domino to fall, though. Like, where does Aaron Rodgers go? And then once we get that news, it's going to be really easy to start making these mocks.
Yeah, and that's true because that'll determine the Packers pick. It'll determine whoever ends up with.
Yeah, exactly.
And if he goes to one of those quarterback needy teams, then that determines sort of that order at the top, maybe.
So 16, Joey Porter Jr., kind of the last of the three cornerbacks that I really like. Well, there'll be one, and you see him on the screen right now. We'll talk a little bit. I think that makes a lot of sense. The Pittsburgh Steelers kind of holding the bag a little bit. They don't get any of the three top cornerbacks. They don't get any of the three top tackles. And I think a lot of Steelers fans would say that hurts, right? You're sitting at 17. You're hoping one of those three tackles or one of those three cornerbacks fall. They don't. Guys, Anton Harrison.
We got to be talking about top four tackles because Anton Harrison, you could take him over Peter Skoronski, and I wouldn't bat an eye. You take him over any of them, I wouldn't bat. I mean, he was really, really good in college. Probably one of the stronger offensive linemen I've ever seen, and at his size, a very good athlete and mover.
And he's a guy that the sky's the limit for him. Like, you watch him and you think he has got a lot of things to clean up, but the raw talent and the upper body strength this dude has is next to none. All right, pick 18. This is the one where I really – and this is more of like I'm going to die on this hill, and I'm kind of putting my flag in the ground of Eli Ricks is my guy. Off the field concerns are a problem, and you pull up his profile, and I completely get why you might be a little concerned. 6 games in 2021, only played 9 games in 2022, but like the advanced stats, like when he was targeted, 30% completion rate, 45.3% passer rating when other quarterbacks target him. Like, this dude is, I think he's like another he's a Joey Porter Jr. clone in terms of like a little bit of slender, but he's got long arms. But when you watch him, what you're most impressed with is how smooth he is. It's really rare to see guys with 6'2", 33-inch arms who are as smooth as Eli Ricks. There's a reason he was a top prospect out of high school. He's got that athleticism. I think Eli Ricks, when this process is done and he tests at his Alabama Pro Day, I think we're going to be talking about him as a top first-round pick here.
No, and again, he's a guy like you just didn't maybe get to see at the top level just because he didn't play a ton of games at Alabama for whatever reason.
But when he played, he was so good.
On play, he was so good.
And that might be something you got to do, right? You got to make sure those concerns are kind of put away off the field. And if you feel comfortable with those interview process with Eli Ricks, he's a guy that is the talent on the football fields at a high level. All right, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is another team kind of similar to the Packers. You're kind of like post elite quarterback era, kind of rebuilding. I don't think there's a better guy to get into your team in your locker room than Nolan Smith. And he was like a large part of why Georgia started going on this run of national championships. I think that makes sense from not only is he a phenomenal player, but he's a phenomenal guy to get in your locker room, especially when you think of some of the older guys in Tampa. Kind of, you're not sure how long they'll be there. Levante David type guy. Nolan Smith's a guy that comes in and kind of becomes that new franchise guy on the defensive side of the ball. Seattle Seahawks, and this is a weird one, though. I'm kind of interested to hear your take. I think they could really use another wide receiver. Like, Geno Smith put up phenomenal numbers. DK, Tyler Lockett, and then not really a wide receiver 3. Like, Jordan Addison could be on the other side of DK. You got DK, Jordan Addison, and Tyler Lockett. Jordan Addison is not a freak testing. He's 6'1", 175 pounds. He's not the biggest. He's not the fastest. But similar to what you say with JSN, he is the smoothest. Like, this dude glides on the football field. And when you look at translating to the next level, being a polished route runner like Jordan Addison and JSN are, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Jordan Addison, he's right up there with JSN. I think they both – I mean, you just can't deny the production in college. Like, he put up crazy numbers with Pickett and then again with Caleb Williams.
And then the film is he's just an elite route runner. He just gets open. And the kind of – I have JSN higher. Like, if you ask me to take a wide receiver, I'm taking JSN over Jordan Addison. I have JSN going 21 because I think it's a little bit better of a fit. Think the Seattle Seahawks, you have your guy in the slot in Tyler Lockett. Jordan Addison kind of plays towards that boundary. And then JSN, I think, fits perfectly in this Chargers offense. I don't know if he'll be there at 21, but if he is, that'd be a phenomenal pick for the Chargers.
Yeah, he complements those bigger wideouts a little more, and especially like they just get a sense they need a safety blanket in San Diego or LA now at times. But
yeah, all right, Lucas Van Ness going to the Baltimore Ravens here. I'm not sold on Lucas Van Ness. A lot of people have him as like a top 15. Some people have him as a top 10 prospect. I don't see it. I'm kind of meeting people in the middle. Like he's not in the top 32 on my board. So I'm meeting a little bit people in the middle. The Baltimore Ravens have a lot of speedsters on the outside and Odafe Owe and David Ajabo. Now you got an edge rusher who's going to run right through a tackle's face. Dill, I don't know what you think there. I don't know what I think.
The problem is, I feel like we're building a whole profile on, like, again, I've said it before, but like a handful of plays because he just wasn't a guy you noticed, and that's probably why nobody even was talking about him until the end of the season when like draft postseason bulls and such come out when guys like, oh, he's a good athlete, and then you think, well, why didn't I notice this guy playing at Iowa? I didn't know he was on the field, and then that type of thing concerns me because at the end of the day, you got to dominate on the field at college if you're going to be a good pro, I think.
Yes, but the flashes you saw of the power, he's
been
working my way on my board.
Not that many of them.
Yeah, there isn't because he didn't play that much.
Consistent.
But holy smokes, like the power he has, you can see translating at the next level at some point. All right, 23, Emmanuel Forbes. This cornerback class is just absolutely so loaded. Very smooth, long arms. He's a ball hawk, 13 interceptions. I believe he had 6 pick sixes in his 3 years at Mississippi State, which is just – Dill, we were starting Martin Emerson last year for Mississippi State, and then the other cat, Emmanuel Forbes, kept jumping out at us. Exactly. The ball production is there. The one concern – you ran a 4.35 at the combine as well, but – The one concern you have is, I mean, being 6'1", 168 pounds, that's kind of wild.
But like, again, he played. It's not like picking him off the street and you've never seen him play football.
We're in that group chat and we're talking about it, and like you're concerned about it. And the two things we had one of our buddies tell us about is whether it is like, why can't you put on the weight, or you don't not even trying to put on the weight. But at that point, it's like the Devontae Smith argument too, is like those guys dominated in the SEC at that weight. I'm not concerned about them translating to the next level. Devontae Smith's been obviously fine. I think Emmanuel Forbes will be fine. Pick 24. And this, I made it official like a couple of days ago. Luke Musgrave is officially my tight end 1. You go back and even watch the first 2 games before he got hurt in 2022. The height, the size, and the speed, and the athleticism, and the ball skills. He's like the tight end position.
He's the type of tight end you need to be if you're going to go really high and be an all pro.
What's the purpose of an elite tight end? Is to be too big for safeties to deal with you and too fast for backers to deal with you. I think Luke Musgrave fits that perfectly. And I think he can block a little bit more than people give him credit for.
There's no blocking. This isn't.
Yeah, that's true. You're not taking a tight end in the top 25 because he's a blocker. I agree with that. All right, pick 25, Zay Flowers. This would be really good. The Giants are hoping that one of these wide receivers falls to them at 25. Zay Flowers does. I think you run in that card. 26, Bijan Robinson. And when Rock was on here, he sold me the most on this situation where if you look at this wide receiver group, I think it's a solid class. I don't think it's an elite class. I think we've seen a lot better classes the last 5 years than this group. You're looking at offensive playmakers that – who is the guy on the offensive side outside of a quarterback that's going to impact the offense the most? Bijan Robinson might be that argument.
That is probably true. My issue is I think Tony Pollard's really good, and I don't know why you would take a guy because you got to give Tony Pollard the football.
Yeah, but is Tony Pollard a guy you want 25 touches a game? I think Tony Pollard's –
I think Tony want a lot more touches than he was getting with Zeke. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. But you're also getting a play like you got a guy like Bijan Robinson you know is going to make an impact on your team. I get it's a running back position, but you're paying him nothing as a rookie. I think
Bijan Robinson makes a lot of sense to me for like a team like the Bills who have no answer at running back and have had no answer for a long time. The problem is I think the Cowboys do kind of have an answer. I think Tony Pollard's a really, really good player.
Well, moving on to 27, the Bills lose out on Bijan Robinson, but get one of our favorite players in the draft in Brian Brzee. And that's something that as Bills fans, we've been saying we just gotta get more physical in the trenches, especially when you take a look at when the Bills need to play their best football in Orchard Park when it's 20 degrees and snowing out. You gotta have some physicality in the trenches. Brian Brzee is gonna bring that to you.
100%. That'd be a dream pick.
Elijah Cansey going 28. Very conflicted on a guy like Elijah Cansey. The film is just absolutely unreal. You see the 23% pass rush win rate from the inside. That's rare, but it's also like, is that game going to translate when you're 6'1", 280 pounds? Can you translate that interior defensive pass rush to the next level is the question. So you might see him slip a little bit, but there's going to be a team that looks at him and says, yeah, that film is good enough for a 28th overall pick.
Yeah, I agree. And I have the same issues, especially like, can he generate enough power to challenge guys at the next level? But then there is also a part like, well, he was so good in college. He is such a good athlete for that weight. And you feel like he's going to find something to do in the NFL, whether it's like being a dominant D tackle down in, down out, or whether it's more situational. I think he's going to have a good role somewhere.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, Bill, I threw these two guys in here because they're your guys, and Felix Anudike-Uzomah is a name that for some reason we just don't see in first rounds a lot. Threw him in there for the Saints. They've missed on a lot. When they drafted Peyton Turner out of Houston, like I was just like left scratching my head. Like you're not going to have the problems with Felix Anudike-Uzomah is going to translate to the next level, and then your guy John Michael Schmitz.
And especially Felix, like John Michael Schmitz, I feel like is starting to get his credit in the world, and people are talking about him as the number one interior guy, which I think he is. To be that big, that athletic, have that good a film, I think is what you're looking for. But Felix Anudike-Uzomah, I don't get why people are such haters on him. He's honestly probably in terms of just being a refined pass rusher, he's right up there with anyone in this draft class. He's been really productive now for 2 years in a system that I don't think wildly conducive to his game, that like 3 down lineman kind of world. But at the end of the day, he's just a really good pass rusher. I don't think he's like a tremendous athlete necessarily, but he's good enough. And I think he's a better pass rusher than most of these other guys.
All right. Last pick. And I always leave the last pick off so you can kind of see some of the guys that we passed on here. Kansas City Chiefs, last pick in the first round. The last two times we kind of been like, all right, let's go get Travis Kelce's replacement in Dalton Kincaid. Michael Mayer could be a guy. Kind of want to look down this list and just talk about some guys that haven't gone yet that we like a lot. I think Tommy Adebawore, like Frank Clark, probably going to be a cap hit. But Tommy Adebawore has played himself into a first-round pick.
Yeah, he's really good too. I do like the idea of going Nathaniel Dell for this team. I think he makes a lot of sense. I think it's not that early, though. They need a wideout who's just really good. I think like Juju, Kadarius Toney, the guy they got, Scantling, like they haven't found a guy who can really be wildly productive at that wideout spot. I think Tank Dell is vastly underrated. Yeah, he's a little small, but I think the way the Chiefs play, it doesn't matter if you're small. They do a good job keeping guys off of press coverage, and if you let Nathaniel Dell get too much space, he's just too athletic, too quick, all of that. I think
you could say a lot of the same things for Josh Downs. I'll go with it. Tank Dell for the small guys. After the Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, JSN, Quentin Johnston, I think teams are better fit waiting a little bit because I think guys like A.T. Perry, Michael Wilson, Jaden Reed are gamers. But that'll do it for our first round pick. We talked about, I think we got every single prospect that made, or every single team that made a pick, talked a little bit about their prospects. So again, appreciate you guys for checking us out. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.